Hello and welcome everyone to EllieMD's live educational series. I'm Honey Sagari, founder and CEO of Ellie, and we're so excited to have you all here. At Ellie, community and education are at the heart and center of everything that we do. We don't just want to offer access to cutting edge therapies. We want you to understand them, feel confident in them, and be surrounded by a community of people on the same journey towards health and longevity. If you haven't heard, EllieMD just launched Dihexa. Yay! Dihexa is one of the most fascinating cognitive peptides in the space right now. Lots of people are talking about it, and the conversation around what it can do for brain health, memory, and cognitive performance is one we knew we had to bring to our community. To walk us through the science behind Dihexa and what it could mean for your health, we welcome back Dr. Jason Pencek. Dr. Pencek, if you don't know, is a board certified nurse practitioner and chiropractor who blends traditional medicine with integrative and longevity focused care. He started in nursing, expanding into chiropractic medicine, and has spent over a decade working at the intersection of peptide therapy, hormone optimization, and metabolic health. His whole approach is rooted in treating the full person, getting to the root cause of disease, not just managing symptoms. We love that. Thank you, Dr. J. Dr. Pensek, we're glad you're here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Welcome back. Welcome back. I
Thank you.
think
Thank you.
everyone's familiar. So this is Mental Health Awareness Month. That's what May
Hmm.
is, and we've brought a couple of really interesting peptides to the community: C-Link, C-Max, and methylene blue. We can kind of talk about how these are different, but let's start by talking about dihexa. Tell us what it is, what makes it so potent and powerful. What's all the hype around dihexa? Break it down for us, Dr. J.
Well, if you ever wanted the drug from the movie Limitless with Bradley Cooper, that's Dihexa. That was originally when it's designed for this super amazing memory peptide. It works on angiotensin 4 in the brain. It's a derivative basically of this. It's an analog. And it works on the what's called hepatic growth factor and CMET pathway. So what we're trying to do is increase synaptogenesis, making more neurons in the brain. You make more neurons and you can form better memories. You can think better. You have better cognitive reasoning. Speech improves. Long-term memory gets better. Anything revolving memory and cognitive function just improves with Hexa. It was designed many years ago at the Washington State University, and actually, it has been thought to be such a good peptide. The drug companies decided they wanted to get their hands on it too, and they wanted to play with it. So there's been some research into dihexa and how it works in patients. It's one of the peptides I find it's a hit or miss. This isn't one you take for 3 months and hope everything gets better. People will be on it and say, "Oh my gosh, I feel really good." Um, Remind me, honey, is this going to be an oral or topical? How is this going
It's
to be?
it's an
Okay,
oral capsule. But you
got it.
use the word synaptogenesis. And so
Hmm.
let's take it back.
Yeah,
First of all, explain to everyone what synaptogenesis
yeah,
means and is, and also what happens as we age. What
of course.
happens to those synaptic pathways?
Yeah, for sure. So synaptogenesis means we're making more synapses in the brain. There's these basically dendrites. We have like these neurons in the
Little
cell
trees.
in the brain. Yeah, and they little like a little kind of arms, and they reach out and they touch another cell. So then there'll be one cell and it might have synapses to different cells and touch different things. So it's going to try to touch and activate other cells around it. That's how memories are formed. You have all these synapses, right? They're just cells. All the memories you have in your entire brain are all formed by little cells going up into another cell and telling the cell, hey, remember this, and using neurotransmitters to get there. Now, when you make more synapses, you're able to form new memories. That's what happens. You're able to pick up information faster, right? The more synapses, the more these connect to other different neurons in the brain, the better you're able to recall and use the information you've had. So the goal as we age is to keep those synapses as fresh as possible. When you get older, these synapses don't work as well. Just in general, like everything in our body, I think we can understand things start to break down. Just the aging process, unfortunately, breaks down everything, right? Muscle mass, we increase fat, everything moves towards entropy. So entropy is just when we're moving towards entropy, everything is just kind of falling apart. all at once. And this happens to every part of us, right? Cognitive decline does happen as you age. It has always been understood that Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, Alzheimer's really is related to I think tau proteins in the brain. There's some neurofibrillary tangles that happen. So what dihexa aims to do is help improve these loss of connections we see in the brain, these tangles that happen, kind of spreading through the different parts of the brain and preventing memories from being not only being formed but from accessing these long-term memories. So the whole point of this dihexa was to improve basically the connection from one neuron to the next neuron, so you can get these informations passed from one to the other faster, better, and make stronger signaling. The stronger you make the synapses, like think of this, think of driving, right? Or maybe riding a bike is the best way to go. Right? When you ride a bike, the first time you know what you're doing, you need training wheels, you fall over, but as you do it, we always talk about it, right? You like riding a bike, you get back on, you start going. These neurons keep firing the same patterns again and again and again, and it's able to access this. Same thing happens with memories. You keep firing these patterns, you keep thinking of the same thing, the same memory again and again becomes very strong. So what DiHex is aiming to do is help strengthen these synaptic connections so all memories become easier to access, quicker to access, right? So you're not sitting there and thinking, hold on, what's that word? Uh, 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 Memory. And so what we're trying to do is improve long-term outcomes for how memories are formed and how we retrieve them.
Okay, so there's synaptogenesis and then there's
Mhm.
neuroplasticity because
Correct.
dihex also aids and helps
Neuroplasticity,
promote
correct.
neuro. Explain and define neuroplasticity. What does it mean and how does it happen? What's the process?
Yeah, so neuroplasticity is how well we can form new memories, right? Um, when you've had a stroke, for example, you might lose some neuroplasticity, was the ability of your brain to come back to where it was previously. So one of the things we like about Dehexa, it also has some anti-inflammatory benefits to it, which helps this neuroplasticity, allows your brain to be plastic, right? Our brains very much made to be able to keep learning new things as you get older, right? You don't become 50 and all of a sudden lose the ability to learn new things. That's what neuroplasticity is, the ability to keep learning new memories. We strengthen this between synaptogenesis and neuroplasticity. These two go hand in hand. They work very well together. Neuroplasticity is allowing you to form new memories and to help create a better solid foundation with the neurons that are going on. So the idea of neuroplasticity is that you're going to have the ability to form new memories at any age, and dihexa allows it to happen with improvements of synaptogenesis. Kind of they work together.
So we briefly touched on this, but the
Mhm.
brain's ability to form and retrieve memories is something that a lot of us take for granted.
Yeah.
Um, until it starts slipping away from us. What's actually happening in the brain during memory formation, and what's actually happening when we start to lose our memory
Yeah.
and our memory begins to decline?
Yeah. So what we want to work on it is I've been saying synaptogenesis, making synapses right from neuron to neuron. What we also lose is the neurons in the brain, right? So we want to make more neurons and we want to make more connections. You need both of these things. And as we age, the neurons that we have in the brain, they just don't work as well. The synapses don't connect to what they used to, right? These neurons end up dying. For example, when we talk about um, diabetes and we talk about Alzheimer's, we talk about the Alzheimer's is going to be type 3 diabetes, right? This is because high blood sugar leads to the destruction of these neurons in the brain and basically destroys what's going on. Same thing it does to our red blood cells. Same thing it does to our body as we age. Having that high blood sugar causes damage. Same thing's going on in the brain, right? When you start destroying neurons, you start destroying synapses. You need both of these. So synaptogenesis is going to be creating more of the synapses from one neuron to the next, and the other one is neurogenesis, which is what really the neuroplasticity is, making more neurons. You need both these things to occur. You have to make more synapses from neuron to neuron, and you need more neurons. And very likely, what makes such a big deal is it's actually going to help the synapses. So the neurons are important because you need these cells to get the information. The synapse is important because they tell the signal where to go. What's the more important thing is where's the signal go? Telling where to go, forming the new synapses is even more important than the neurons. Some neurons are extremely important, but you need to know where the information is going, right? If I hand you a telephone, but you don't know who to call, you have the phone doesn't do any good. So you want to put the connection to where it's supposed to go and send the information. Then the synaptogenesis is such an important part. You're basically rewiring the brain. That's what DiHex is trying to do.
So a lot of us women, we experience brain fog, different
Mhm.
hormone during different hormonal
Yeah,
fluctuations, especially during menopause and again, surrounding hormones. Is dihexa something that can aid and assist during these phases of life and during these hormonal changes that happen?
for sure. Um, when you're going through the perimenopause and menopause, a lot of them will say brain fog. Brain fog happens to me. Brain fog happens to me. It's a very common complaint. By using something like dihexa, you can work on this hepatocyte growth factor, right? This hepatocyte growth factor basically activates CMET pathway. What we're trying to do is keep these cells from dying. And we get older and we start having this brain fog, we're having like, basically cells are dying off. That's what's going on in the brain. What we're trying to do is keep these cells around for as long as possible. Dihexa does this, right? This is what it's so good at. It not only keeps these cells around from dying, so it keeps cell survival. It's like resilience for these neurons, and it's making new neurons. It's making new synapses. So when you get older and you go into this perimenopause and menopause, like I know I have my car keys. Where are they? When we start using like dihexa again, you start to form better connections. So you remember where you put it, right? The new memory. I put my car keys here, trying to recall the information. So recall gets better from utilizing something like DiHex. There is some big improvements in the recall. People will tell you if they've been on DiHex before, oh my gosh, I just felt like my verbal fluency was better. My memory was better. My consolidation. So when you go to bed is when you form new memories. And this helps that consolidation so you form better long-term memories. Again, more neurons, more connection between the neurons is how you form new memories and you have a better ability to recall the memories you make. So when you're going to menopause and you're having, this brain fog and you're feeling like I just can't remember where this thing is, this is a good use case for dihexa. I use a lot of patients in general, but I do find my patients that are in menopause seem to have a better response because it also brings down the neuroinflammation that we see. It's another thing that the GLP-1s work on. So here's a crossover between your GLP-1s and your dihexa right now. Right, dihexa is great. I'm always saying use dihexa, but that first step for people is GLP-1s, reduce neuroinflammation, and then add even more things to reduce neuroinflammation, right? If brain function is an important part, I know, especially women, you're worried about this long-term Alzheimer's risk. It is twice as high in you as it is in a man. And doing things like using GLP-1s help promote long-term memories and help promote reduction of neuroinflammation. And then you can also utilize things like the hex on top of that to keep yourself keeping those memories going and also keep that neuroinflammation further down. Because again, that's all we're worried about. Inflammation drives most of these issues women have when they go through menopause. Removing estrogen as you age is going to cause a lot of this, right? We have to remember estrogen is a protective blanket. It's an immune blanket, protects the immune system. When you take away estrogen, you start to see things like TNF alpha, interleukin 6, interleukin 1 beta go up. NF kappa beta is driving this whole pathway, and that starts to rise. Everything starts to rise. When inflammatory cytokine starts, inflammation starts, it also happens in the brain. So removing inflammation from the brain is one of the best things. Again, GLP-1s and dihexa. Here's your next tool to reduce inflammation in the brain. Dihexa. And on top of reducing inflammation, it's making new neurons and better connections with the neurons. Now you're just kind of hitting the brain with everything you possibly can and seeing this improvement in brain function as well as inflammation at the same time.
What I love about this compared to stimulants, for example, like stimulants, they work temporarily on the brain, right?
Mhm,
And the different synapses, but this
mhm.
is not just temporary.
Yeah.
It
So
rewires the brain essentially. It's
yeah,
rewiring the entire brain. Can you
yeah.
touch
So
on
it's
that?
of
Like
course. So
compare it
it's
to what a stimulant does.
yeah. So the stimulant's basically going to be short term, right? A stimulant is going to wake you up. It's not forming new connections. It's not improving how you connect. This is non-stimulatory. So you're not like on, edge, having a higher heart rate. What you're just doing is having better memory recall and forming the new memories. This is really what it's all about. How do I make the memories consolidate and actually how am I able to recall them? So a stimulant is going to just help your brain. It's going to be faster. Everything just moves faster. So when you use a stimulant, it's going to help work on dopamine, and using dopamine can help work on neural pathways, and then it doesn't improve any learning and memory. what's so special about dihexa is it does have this, again, neurogenesis, synaptogenesis. That makes it different than everything else. Forming new neurons, making better connections. I can't say this enough times. What we have to understand is all we want to do is form new neurons and make more connections. That is the only thing that really matters in the brain, as well as bring inflammation down. Inflammation drives the destruction of the synapses and the neurons. And what we want to do is form more and bring inflammation down. So the stimulants are going to be, some people obviously love stimulants to help keep them going. It keeps them awake, right? So if you're having energy problems, stimulants might be great. I think some people are using stimulants because they're exhausted, they're tired. Maybe their hormones haven't been checked, right? This is where I say, hey, what is your thyroid? Where's your testosterone? Where are your hormones at? And we're using stimulants to help bring us up and keep us going, right? We're drinking coffee, we're taking Adderall, we're taking, different things, Strattera, sorry, not Strattera, more amphetamines to keep us going. The dihexa doesn't wake you up. It just helps that brain function like it should. Again, this is the limitless drug. So when you take this, you just memories start coming out faster and faster and faster and improving recall speed and formation of memories, which is what we want. You read a book, you hold the information better. You read the new, you take it in. You have a new experience, you can hold the memory better. That's what we're trying to do. And again, as we age, we do see people having a hard time forming memories and keeping them in, especially again, women. Perimenopause. Inflammation makes it harder for you to remember these new things. Oh, I just tried doing this yesterday. I can't remember what it is. Yeah, something like dihexa can improve that. Um, with dihexa, the one thing that I think gets talked about a lot is that people are not sure how well it works. Just the there is some there's not a lot of good human data, but I can tell you it works so well right now. The pharmaceutical company believes in it so much, they've been working on a pro drug of it. So this reminds me when we talked about methylene blue a while ago. I said methylene blue, great product. Guess what? They're taking it back as a pharmaceutical drug to make another version of it for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. The pharmaceutical industry understands how well this works. They saw dihexa works. So their goal is to take this and to make it into a drug. So it's the same idea happening right now with dihexa. They're making a drug out of it. Actually, right now, they're in phase 3 trials for this. So we understand how dihex works and what it does is so important. The pharmaceutical industry is trying to make it a drug called phosphomethylmenton, which is in, again, phase 3 trials. I will remind people that if it works so well, the pharmacy or big pharma wants it, tells you something about it, right? They're studying it and looking and saying, hey, this is a massively important thing for memory. How do we get our hands on it? And
Mm.
unfortunately, it's really hard from the patent, some of these peptides the way they are. So their goal, just like the GLP-1s, is to take this and make it a little better and tweak it. So that's what we're trying to do. Same with the GLP-1s, right? This is why you don't take Curb or even uh, the probiotic Acromantia to improve GLP-1s. They don't work as well as the GLP-1s. So dihexa does improve. It actually works pretty well. Just so people understand, what we're trying to work on is something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. We haven't discussed that yet, but brain-derived neurotrophic factor is what does all this heavy lifting. And what makes dihexa so impressive is it's 7 times stronger than this natural BDNF that we make. So again, it's so much stronger at improving
Oh.
synapses and synaptogenesis that it's just absolutely crazy. It is one of these things that's hit or miss. I won't tell people, it works or doesn't work. So I tell them, please try it. There's a lot of my patients that have been on and said, oh my God, I can't tell you much better. My brain now is like, I remember things. I wasn't doing well beforehand. I felt like I was losing my mind, right? I'm sure a lot of women out there feel like they're just losing my mind. I literally learned this. You told me this yesterday. Why can't I remember this anymore? And they get on Hex like, oh, recall, way better than it was.
Okay, I know we can't make claims, and this is
Yeah.
for educational purposes only, but I'd like to touch on ADHD and depression.
Yeah.
So maybe explain to us, I mean, you touched on ADHD and what happens,
Mhm.
it's, dopamine and
Yeah.
but as far as depression goes and Dihexa's role in aiding and assisting and improving symptoms of ADHD and depression, can you touch on that?
Yeah. And I'll also go into autism as well because it's being used as well in autistic patients. Um, there are some actually in my DMs right now, if someone's sitting there actually just asked me, hey, can I get Dihexa from you? I have an autistic son. There's been some good case reports. There's no, full study of this yet on autism patients, helping with their focus really. So part of autism, there's an ADHD, it's hyperfocus, and when you have autism, you can have other brain disorders going with it. But it's helping them form new memories. In fact, I saw a video just recently, someone claiming that they take it for their own autism, and it's helped them be more, I guess, present with people, because one of the hallmarks of autism, you just don't understand, read the room, right? And unfortunately, also autism, you don't really always read the room or get what's going on. And Dihexa, this person specifically, was claiming it has made me really be present and feel like I'm part of the conversation and not kind of distant from it. So this is the same thing I've actually seen in practice. We've had autistic patients we put on Dihexa orally, and the parents of these younger, I guess you say, they're adults, they're in their 20s, have come to me and said, I do see a difference. Um, they're not going, they're not doing the same kind of over and over movements they do that typically have your autistic patients doing. It's the same thing again and again and again. It also helped them actually express themselves better. And I was also told that it helped improve overall their ability to focus. So again, same thing with my ADHD patients. I've had patients take it for ADHD, and they're able to just be more present and be there and not feel like they're going a mile a minute from thing to thing to thing. They're able to lock into one certain thing. Would I say it's as strong as taking a Vyvanse or an Adderall? Probably not. But for patients that want a non-stimulatory option, this is one of those things. Again, anytime you're forming new neurons and you're forming new synapses, this allows better memory recall. And when you have this ADHD, that's part of it. I can't remember anything. I can't focus. So what it's doing is allowing these memory pathways to get hit over and over again and form those pathways to keep, um, I guess, creating the ability for your body and your mind to focus better because you have the synapses in place that have been built over and over. Now, for depression, I've got to say, in depression, I've had a handful of patients use Dihexa. It's been more rare. There are other peptides I've used. I also use hormones for that and growth hormone peptides. So it's like one of the last things. But I have had patients who've taken Dihexa and have said, I just feel lighter. And it's the word I use, lighter, than did before. Same idea. If you're improving synaptogenesis and neurogenesis, you're helping with neurotransmitters. The better, um, the more neurotransmitters you're creating, makes serotonin's increasing. And when you use things like dihexa, you're improving the neurotransmitters going around the body. So you're improving things. You're not saying this is got a dopamine enhancer. Not saying it's going to increase serotonin, but I have a patient who take it in and said, reported back, yeah, I actually feel better than I did. My brain fog got better, which helped me feel a lot better and less depressed. So again, these are a lot of these patients I work with are actually most of the practices women in menopause, typically like between like the mid 30s all the way up to like 60s. It's probably 70% of my practice. So I do have a lot of women who have used iHex and had good responses. It's been useful, and people that haven't tried it, I do recommend and obviously say that dihex is something I have used in practice before. And if you want to try it, it's EllieMD has it now. This is the thing. If you want to improve that memory, try it, see if it works. I can't tell you every patient's been impressed. There are some peptides that we know work. Methylene blue, I love, right? Dihex has just been a little more, does it work or does it not work? And if it really works, people that try it absolutely love it. The people that tried it and can't see a difference, like, oh, I can't really tell much of it. So this is one that I'd say try it, see where you're at, and then see if it actually works for you long term.
Okay, so we touched on sharper
Mhm,
recall, better focus and memory, faster
mhm.
mental processing, better verbal fluency. I've also heard about, more creativity and
Yeah,
motivation
for sure.
that results out of this. Now, we are offering multiple products. I'm going to be a member of the Ellie community and say, okay, so we have C-Lank, C-Max, methylene blue, now dihexa. Which one do I take and for what? Do I take all four together? Like, is that enough? So talk to us about maybe how each one of these individually work. Like methylene blue works on the mitochondria. That's energy production, the cell's factory, and
Mhm.
that improves in certain. So where and what should an individual who's looking for all of these benefits, where should they look?
Yeah. Let's think of dihexa as cognitive optimization, right? We love the word optimization. So we're cognitively optimizing you. NAD is wonderful, right? If you have mitochondrial problems, and here's actually the crux of this, most of the problems in the brain come from low energy, not enough ATP being created. So ATP is your cellular energy, it's the currency of energy at the cell level. And as we get older, we make less ATP. You have less mitochondria, less dense mitochondria. Mitochondria are now your powerhouses. This is what's creating the ATP. So NAD is wonderful because NAD will actually help improve that ATP production. So when you give NAD, your ATP levels go up. This is great. Improving that actual cell energy is one of the most important things for the brain. So a lot of patients, I say, let's just start with this. Dihex is not a first line for me. Dihex is after we've done a few other things. We've done NAD, right? NAD is great. It helps improve cognitive performance, it improves energy. Those are the two things. You take NAD, and a lot of people tell you, my brain just feels clear, right? I'm now present. I'm with it. It NAD is not going to work on synaptogenesis, but it's going to get the energy back to drive all the cognitive needs, right? For that neuron to fire, you need energy. Without that cellular ATP, nothing's going to happen, right? You need energy for that something to happen, right? This is the movement down that synaptic, that dendrite, basically into the synapse, and then helping you release these neurotransmitters into the synapse. This is what we're trying to do here. You need energy, right? So first step, we fix energy, mitochondria. So this is where MOTS-C and NAD come really in. They're really helping improve this. MOTS-C and NAD both can improve brain fog because they improve energy. Now, secondarily, we have CMAX. I love CMAX. I think it's a great option. I actually, before EllieMD offered it, I had a few EllieMD clients that reached out to me and said, we want to try this CMAX stuff. We want to try it. And few of the EllieMD clients, and in fact, some of your affiliates loved it. They said it was absolutely phenomenal. I tried CMAX and said, "Oh my God, I'm so much sharper. I'm on it." It's so funny. I've used CMAX before in the past, honey, and I always use it and as needed, right? CMAX and CLANC. I both just took them whenever I wanted to. Couldn't see much from it. What I have found in practice is it's regularly use. So using these things regularly gives you a lot better performance. CMAX, CLANC aren't meant to be just one-time use. It's meant to build and build and build. Because what CMAX does is also what Dihex does. It increases BDNF, this brain-derived neurotrophic factor. BDNF is really important for helping form new memories and helping with memory in general. So CMAX helps improve this BDNF. It's a really good option for that. It's easy. It's a nasal spray. People love it. Hits the brain really quickly. I've had a lot of patients love CMAX. In fact, you can look online. You can go on the Reddit forums and people discuss CMAX and say how great it is. It's been a super useful tool in practice. I pair it with C-Link. It works really well as in helping to focus, right? So I would say CMAX is like raises the amplitude, like you have this like huge improvement in kind of memory, and C-Link quiets down everything else. So C-Link is like meant to just chill everything out while you're raising that like memory and that focus. And then finally, we have Dihexa. So Dihexa is basically it's the architect. It's what builds it, right? CMAX and C-Link are going to help work on improving the signaling, whereas Dihexa gives the neurons and the actual synapses to make it happen. Like you need Dihexa for the actually building of this stuff. So they all work in different ways, right? Here we make more energy. Now we're helping improve how that neuron is firing. And now we're making them better making new neurons, and we're making more synaptogenesis. So it is basically the architect that's kind of putting everything together, which is why it is so important. Putting all of it together really just is kind of the best cognitive profile you could do. So what we want to do is you want the structural integrity. I'm going to have the structure down, and Dihexa builds the structure. This is like when we build a bridge, right? You have cars going over it. You have to have the bridge form, the outline of it first. And once it's formed, then you can do whatever you want with it. So this is working on structural integrity and forming the base parts you need to make CMAX and also NAD work better.
And I think you missed methylene blue.
Methylene blue, yes, and it's methylene blue. What is our methylene blue right now? Yes, methylene blue. That's another one for again energy, right? So we talked about this before. Methylene blue does really good at improving overall energy, right? So methylene blue works in what's called electrode transport chain. To go back to cell biology for everyone, electrode transport chain is how we actually makes energy at a cell level. What happens is NADH goes to complex one and through a series of different steps, moves one single electron down this and turns into what's ATP. So just think of this. We have NADH and turns eventually into making ATP, cellular energy. If there's damage to parts, this electron transport chain, this thing that actually produces all this energy, then you cannot move this electron down the chain. Methylene blue bypasses two of these parts, complex one, complex three, and allows you to still produce energy, even in a broken system. So if this system's broken, what's happening? You're putting off a lot of what's called reactive oxygen species. We talk about this all the time. Oxidative damage, oxidative damage. That's why we're eating blueberries for antioxidants. Like, how do we reduce our oxidative damage? When you have mitochondria that are not functioning, electron transport chain that aren't functioning, there's a lot of damage going on. Methylene blue prevents this damage from getting worse because it bypasses the whole system, moves from skips complex one and three, and just moves the electron to where it needs to go. So there's less reactive oxygen species damage. And it also allows you to make more energy. And I said energy is what matters when it comes to memory. You have to have more ATP. You can use NAD, you can use methylene blue. So methylene blue is another one that is useful to improve how much energy you have. Now, methylene blue will work, but it works the best when you actually have damage to the mitochondria. So people that say their energy is way better, their brain function is way better because they have some mitochondrial damage. And again, this is another one I just said, they're making a drug out of it. LMTX is the reduced version of methylene blue. Methylene blue comes as an oxidative molecule. So it's reduced oxidative, just to know whether it has electron, doesn't have an electron carrier. And so they're seeing methylene blue actually improves Alzheimer's and improves mild to moderate Alzheimer's in the trial so far. And again, same with dihexa. Again, dihexa is not the actual drug, the drug they're making. And like they're saying, wow, this actually improves Alzheimer's and memory formation. So again, you're using both the methylene blue and dihexa. These are the precursors to what they're making drugs for. So they work. We know this data. We understand how they work. And we're very sure on the mechanisms of what these work on. Again, dihexa works on this whole CMET pathway and on this hepatic growth factor, HGF. So HGF basically goes to CMET and basically keeps the cells alive. This is what we're trying to do, cell survival. We want the cells to last longer in the brain, and dihexa is really good at doing that. So think again, still dihexa is still the one creating all the hardware you need, the pieces, and everything else on top of it is acting to keep all those pieces going so they work more efficiently.
I like that. This is well, that's a great explanation. There's some great questions coming in, and I want to make sure
Okay.
we get to it before our time is up. But Lee Tucker wrote, "My friend has had a stroke and has had some short-term memory loss. Will any of these peptides help and assist?"
Uh, Stroke, yes. CMAX actually has been used. So here's the thing. The data on some of these things, CLANC and CMAX, come out of Russia. So people argue all the time, is this data good? I can tell you in practice, we've used CMAX in patients that have had stroke and traumatic brain injuries, and it has been useful. They increase this brain-derived neurotrophic factor, again, trying to form new neurons. It does help. So brain-derived neurotrophic factor is working on. So yes, CMAX can help. You want more energy for the brain, right? We talked about this. To make these neurons work, you need energy. So yes, NAD can also help because NAD can help with repair and recovery as well. And then dihexa is the actual, again, this is the engineering side, right? This is the actual structural part. And when you've had some kind of stroke, you've had damage, you've lost neurons, right? You've lost blood flow to the area. What happens when you use blood flow to an area, just like a heart attack? Those cells die. And so what we do is bring new cells back. And this is where dihexa actually really shined because it can create new neurons. That is what it was designed to do, based on the theory of how it works with HGF and CMET. So yeah, for a patient that's had stroke, CMAX, I use NAD, I use dihexa. I also use what's called cerebrolysin, which EllieMD does not have right now. But cerebrolysin is a great one for post-stroke and traumatic brain injury. And they all work to help improve this, right? We're doing everything we can with the stroke patient. Time is money. And when you have a stroke, you want to get those neurons back as fast as possible. We don't have long time. This is going to be something you start quickly with patients because the longer you wait, the more the neurons die off, the more memory you're losing. Because again, remember these synapses start dying off. When the neurons die, these dendritic, pieces from the neuron over to the next neuron are dying off. So you have to make more neurons faster after that.
Thank you. Someone asked about cancer risk of
Yes,
dihexa. Can you touch
let's
on
stop
that?
right there. Yeah, so that is this is something this is just like I falls to be in the same category as being on growth hormone peptides, as far as I'm concerned. Because you work on the CMET pathway, there is risk. There are some people who have this risk of oncogenesis, right? The cancer formation. Now, will it cause cancer? Unlikely. What it's doing, as I just said, it's keeping cells alive, right? It's protecting these cells from dying, which again, why it's so great in stroke. It's protecting cells from dying. What happens when you protect cells from dying that are supposed to die, such as cancer cells? Well, they keep living. So the fear with dihexa is that if you have cancer already or have some cancer growing, theoretically, these cancer cells will survive longer because you protected them. Um, Time and place, right? We in medicine, they're always taking risks, right? For example, I always tell patients, right? If you have breast cancer and you take estrogen, it's going to make it grow faster. Does that mean no one should take estrogen? Absolutely not. It just means you're careful about it, right? So when we use things like growth hormone peptides, even NAD, for example, can potentially have this risk once you have cancer, can cause it, to get worse. But we have to remember not everyone gets cancer. Also, the median age of cancer is about 69. So if my patients, they're in their 50s, and there's obviously lower risk, just less chance of it happening. But yes, there is some um, thought process. There's nothing we've seen, right? There's not enough human data to tell you whether or not it's going to cause cancer. It very unlikely, almost 0% chance, I'd have to say, of causing. But could it grow something? That's the fear we have. Same as being on a CJC or sorry, a testosterone, ipamorelin, same kind of idea as far as I'm concerned. Same fear that I have from that goes with being on dihexa.
I've seen this question come up a number of times. Would this be something you recommend for Parkinson's patients?
Yes. Um,
Maybe
Again,
explain what's happening in Parkinson's.
so Parkinson's, you start to lose dopamine, substantia nigra. It's part of the brain. We lose that, we lose dopamine there, and you start to have, the classic movement pattern changes in the basal ganglia. So you start having issues. Again, same thing. Neurons aren't connected to neurons. It's the same kind of idea. And what we're trying to do is help form these. I would say it does improve with dihexa the movements. This isn't meant for movements in general. I would say dihexa is weaker down the list other than given NAD. For me, NAD is a better option. I'm trying to promote the energy production in the cells before I even go to dihexa. But dihexa still then, again, remember this. This is the thing that's going to create the structure. Improving structure in the brain, no matter how we do it, in neurons and synapses, it's going to improve the outcomes of pretty much any neural condition you can think of, right? If you can make better structure in the brain, anything neurologically should get better, as well as reduce inflammation. That's a secondary thing we talk about hexa. Reduce inflammation, right? When you have Parkinson's, you have this destruction going on. It's inflammatory. Bringing down inflammation could theoretically slow down any kind of progression of Alzheimer's, or sorry, of Parkinson's because of that whole reduction of the inflammation pathways.
So this is an area I'm very passionate about Alzheimer's and dementia. If someone already has Alzheimer's, can dihexa be used to slow down the progression of Alzheimer's or even help the patient maintain baseline for longer?
For sure. Step one, always GLP-1s, right? So I'm always saying if you have Alzheimer's, they have good human data on GLP-1s. I want to say liraglutide was the one they did the studies on last that I can think off the top of my head. They see year over year, there's going to be a 50% more brain volume than someone who did nothing. They also see 20% um, holding of symptoms. So you lose 20% more function if you do nothing as opposed to being on GLP-1. So GLP-1s, first step all the time. Secondarily, I'm trying to improve, again, mitochondrial function. So this is where we use things like MOTS-C, SS31 even is one that we don't have yet with EllieMD, but also NAD. And third, I want to improve those pathways. I want to improve the structure. So dihexa definitely improves the structure, which allows for more memory formation. In fact, this is what it's being studied for. The fluoxetine, which is the drug version of this, is being studied in Alzheimer's. That was the entire point of creating this drug, is for Alzheimer's. So the research all says, yes, this supports Alzheimer's patients. Methylene blue also supports Alzheimer's patients. So, methylene blue, NAD, GLP-1, dihexa, Cmax. They're all in that same category to help improve this. When I have Alzheimer's patients, they're getting that whole stack. They're getting everything I can because Alzheimer's is a slow degenerative process. There is no one drug that's going to stop it from happening or completely reverse it that we have yet. Hopefully, eventually, we don't have that now. So, I always tell people that we hopefully will have a drug in the future, but these are all things we can use to slow down that process. And Dihex is just another one on that list that I say, yes, have this in. Again, not first line, but still something I really want people to look at as an option.
I'm seeing a couple questions come in about human clinical trials on
Yeah,
Dihexa, and there are none. Can you talk about that, Jason?
yeah, for sure.
Can you touch on that?
For sure. This is the same risk factor you have with BP757, right? We have two human trials. Um, same as GHKCU has no human trials injectable. There's just a lack of data. Again, even MOTS-C, right? These are naturally occurring, that are naturally occurring. We don't have much data on them. No human trials of actually using it. I keep going back to remind everyone there are human trials in foxmentin, which is the pro-drug version of this. So basically took this and made it the pro-drug. This is actually the drug version of the same molecule we're talking about here. And in the pro-drug, they have zero adverse effects. They had phase one, phase two, phase three trials done, and it was safe. So what I'm trying to say here is I understand not everything will come back to what the prodrug is. The prodrug is going to be making the active ingredient last longer that we're trying to do. And they took the active ingredient dihex and said, yep, we're going to make it last longer. Now, there might be something else part of dihex we don't know about causing potential issues. There's not enough data on that. But the drug companies found enough use and have enough human data in that to say this is really safe to use. So we look at dihexa kind of in that same idea. So it's foxmenton is again, I can't say this is a guarantee, right? You can't say because this is safe, the next thing's safe, but there's an idea that might be some safety to it because of the fact that we have a prodrug from it that we now believe this. Again, the biggest risk we have is the fact that it doesn't um, allow neurons to die off. It keeps things alive. And that's the oncogenesis fear that we have. It's creating the environment for cells to live longer. And that in cancer is just not good. But again, we have other things we do the same thing with, such as growth hormone peptides that can cause this. So it really depends on your risk tolerance, to be fair with a lot of people. If you're willing to take TB500 or you're willing to take, growth hormone peptides, this would kind of fall in the same category for me of risk in those same areas. So the risk isn't any higher than things you probably have already tried, tesamorelin, ipamorelin, sermorelin, would fall to me in the same category of dihexa.
Out of all the neurocognitive peptides and the nootropics, which one would you recommend for concussions? For someone recovering from a concussion? I
Mm,
experienced that a few months ago, but I
did
did
you
see a
really?
question come in. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, Ellie does not have cerebrolysin, unfortunately. That's my number one is good human data on cerebrolysin concussions. But beyond that, if I had to pick one, I would actually use BP757, even though with dihexa. So I use
Ooh,
BP757 for all my concussion patients. I think it's great. I hope you took BP757 and had a concussion. Did you take it?
I
Good,
did.
good, good. And look,
You told me
it's
that.
hard. I
And
did. It's
the
hard
fact that you
to.
don't
It's
remember.
yeah, it's funny, Marie. I think dihex. So again, I just want to make sure dihex is not the first line, right? There are some first line peptides, BP257. I always do. I'm using different peptides. Dihex is on the list of things that I use. It's just further down the list. It doesn't mean it's not useful. It's just like methylene blue. Methylene blue is not the first place I go to patients. When they're complaining of energy, I'm giving NAD first, right? So just remember, it's not because I'm saying it doesn't work. It's just saying there are other things that work really well too. CMAX works really well for concussions. So it's not right with layering. When we talk about peptide theory, we talk about medicine, we talk about these things, we layer things, right? It's one layer and another layer and another layer. Dihex is not one I go to right away. It doesn't mean you shouldn't try it because there are some people that swear they're like Dihex over Cimax every day. You can see forums of people arguing about this. I've had patients that Dihex worked so well, Cimax did nothing for me, right? So I want people to understand it's not that Dihex doesn't work. It's just on the further down list of me because even though it works on structure and even though structure is one of the most important things, um, in clinical, applications of seeing patients, there are other things that just work really, really well too. And I will tell you, If I'm going to pick between C-Max and dihexa, I typically pick C-Max. Patients come to me, they like a nasal spray. It's really easy to use. I've had more patients have benefits from C-Max compared to dihexa. Again, that doesn't mean that dihexa doesn't work. It just means I don't use it as often, right? I'm taking C-Max over dihexa, and I'm still using dihexa. But by the time I get to dihexa, I've already tried other things. It's like, oh yeah, there's an improvement. So standalone by itself, it's not that we shouldn't try it and use it. It's just that my first thing in clinical practice is going to be like Cmax or C-Lank, NAD. Building the structure is really important. But part of the reason why they're making this longer, this Foxmenton, is because it's going to last in the system longer. And of course, dihex doesn't last long. Same with MOTS-C. MOTS-C has a drug coming out, or they had one, and it's going to last longer. It doesn't mean MOTS-C doesn't work. People do and they love it, right? So it's just further down the list of me. Like a lot of things, I use NAD before I do MOTS-C, right? So it just depends on where the list falls, and dihex is just further down. So
Well, it just seems like they work synergistically,
they
and you
do
can't
for
just
sure,
pick and choose,
for
it's
sure,
the whole thing. It's the whole picture. It's
for
like you
sure.
can't have a house with just a roof. You need the foundation, you need siding,
Yeah.
you need all sorts of things. So to get a complete house, you need different components, and it seems like that's what these peptides are.
Listen,
They bring it
exactly.
all together.
Let's say and here's the thing about dihexa, right? When we do peptides in general, how I run my practice is I start one, then add another, then add another, then another. If I start showing all these things at once, first off, we don't know what the negative reaction will be. If you have an adverse reaction, no idea what it's going to be from. I start all over. Or if you feel wonderful, we don't know what's driving that train the most. So in practice, I'm adding things as I go, right? So it doesn't mean dihex is not part of the protocol. It's just down the list, right? So it's hard to know how well dihexa works by itself because I don't typically start dihexa. I'm building the foundation of, right? For me, the most important thing is fixing mitochondria. In fact, we are very well aware fixing mitochondria is one of the best things you can do. There's a drug called 5-amino-1-MQ that works on the pathway of recycling NAD. And in the brain, you recycle about 90%. This is how it works in the whole body. 90% of our NAD is recycled. So they have another molecule coming out. I can't remember the name of it right off the top of my head. Similar to 5-amino-1 and 1-MQ that helps work on the recycling pathway. And they're going to use this for Alzheimer's patients because, again, it recycles and makes more NAD. So fixing NAD for me is way far above fixing the structure. I need more energy at the baseline. I need more cellular energy before I even care about actually making more structure. Because if I don't have enough energy, the structure doesn't matter. Nothing gets pushed out. So you just have to remember it's built on steps. And not that the foundation doesn't matter, but you need the energy to run the actual structure. To make more neuron, you need more energy. So this is why things get layered this way, right? So it's not that dihex doesn't work. It's just there are usually layers to go down before we get there.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, an image of a tree is coming up. Like, great, you have a lot of branching, but if
Mhm.
you're not flowing the fluids, the xylem and phloem isn't like bringing the nutrients to the tree. Um, the branches, extra branching won't suffice. Okay,
Exactly.
Dr. J, do you have any last words for us? I know my Wi-Fi is getting choppy again, but any last words as we're coming on time? Um, any final words that you'd like to
Of
share
course.
as we wrap up mental
Yeah.
health and
I would
awareness
I,
month?
I would say I really do like dihexa, but I would say get your GLP-1s, microdose your GLP-1s, stay on those. Those are the staple of pretty much what we're doing here. Get your NAD, do your NAD, and then try dihexa. I think it's a wonderful peptide to use and try. And if you haven't seen improvements with it, just like anything, not every peptide is for everyone. That's the whole thing. Not everyone works for everyone, but dihexa does have some really good uses. Like I said, we can use it in Alzheimer's. We can use it in Parkinson's. I've used it in my patients with, autism, ADHD. There's anything neurocognitive going on. I have a really good use case for dihexa. So super useful. Think of structure, building the structure. That's what's going to happen with dihexa. But you still need all the other parts to that. So
Well, thank you again for joining us this week. If you guys don't follow Dr. Jason on Instagram, please do. You can find him at Dr. Jason Pencek on Instagram. We won't even tell you his TikTok account. It's Dr. Thirst Trap, in
it
case you.
is.
Um, But thank you all for joining. This is what makes our community so strong and so powerful. And it's these educational series. It's us coming together as a community. It's us growing and learning and evolving together. Um, so thank you all for taking the time to spend your Thursday evening with us. And thank you again, Dr. Jason.
Thanks, honey. Thanks for having me.
Have a
See everyone.
wonderful
Have a good
night,
one.
everyone. Good night.
Good night.